Good morning and welcome to the Lease App, the multi-asset blockchain-powered leasing application. Um, the intent of this video is to introduce you to the Lease App and um, then demonstrate the listing of an asset for lease. Um, the application essentially allows users to list both movable and immovable assets for lease. Not only does it allow users to list and market those assets, but it also facilitates the various transactions related to a lease deal. So, holding a deposit, processing lease installments, processing handover events, and even calculating interest on overdue amounts. The application brings a lot of functionality all into one place with the intent of making the process of leasing out or in an item a relatively easy and hassle-free activity. Okay, so moving on to listing an asset for lease on the application. We're going to go over to the left here, list and lease, select that, and you'll see we've got a number of cards here, and you'll notice through a lot of the application we've done these card layouts where we've grouped similar information together. And it's been done in that way to make the application intuitive to use and easy to understand with respect to knowing where to find similar information. So for example, here we've got the asset details where we give information about the asset, then the blockchain related stuff, and then the lease terms. So it's relatively easy to understand in that respect. Okay, so starting on the left, we're going to upload a picture of our item. I've decided I would like to lease out a welding machine. I'm sure there's been many a modern man or woman who have been busy on a one-day job, needed a welding machine for something small, and thought, wouldn't it be great if I could just lease out a welding machine for a day or two? So this application would allow that for you to search your local area and find a neighbor or somebody in the near area that would like to lease out their welding machine, and you could get your job done, get it back to them without having to fork out a huge amount to buy one. Okay, the second card, the asset details, you'll see at the top here is category. This is quite an important section because it determines how the rest of the card is populated. So an aircraft is going to have different fields to something like apparel, for example. You'll see the form changes. So it's important for you to select the correct category. We're going to select tools for our welding machine. And you'll then see the next section that comes up is the section movable. And this is a item that you need to select whether your item is movable or not. And what it does is it informs the application as to whether to include logistics service provider options in the various parts of a lease deal. So if a lessee searches for an item and you've tagged your item as movable, the application will include logistics service provider options like shipping or delivery in those search results. So we're going to select yes, and then when we select yes, it shows us here shipping rate. This is the initial default shipping rate. So this is a per unit distance rate. In South Africa we use kilometers, so we're going to say 5, so it would be 5 per kilometer. Now this rate is used to calculate shipping charges when a lessee checks out your item. So if they're 10 kilometers away, it's going to give them a quote of 5 times 10, which is what, 50 for delivery and 50 for return of the item if they select both delivery and return. And it's going to automate that into the various transactions. So that is the default shipping rate. You would then be able to use that money to pay a logistics provider, or you can go and set up an external logistics provider to act automatically in the application. that is a feature that still has a little bit of development to be done, but it's mostly completed and it should be available soon. But for the meantime, you can use your default shipping rate, and that's how you can interact with the application. The next aspect is collection. I don't necessarily want people to come to my property and collect, so I'm going to leave that as no now. Then type, we've got welding machine, make is trade weld, model, MMA, our serial number. Those are all relatively basic. And then we've got condition, which is, we're going to put here good, it's still in good condition. And the weight and dimensions. These are quite important if you've got an item that can be delivered, or a movable item. And the reason being is it checks with the logistics providers to make sure that they can accommodate your item, and that they have the space to transport it, for example. So it's important you get these dimensions correct. The weight is in kilograms and dimensions are in millimeters. So the width ours is going to be 180. The length is going to be 370, and then height 290. We would advise that you use the dimensions that would be the shipping dimensions. So the dimensions that are going to be experienced in reality when shipping your product. So if it's packaged, maybe use those packaged dimensions and the associated weight. Okay, then we come to add-on services and payments, and this is quite a fascinating section because it allows for a lot to be done with a lease deal. So an add-on essentially allows you to add things like insurance or maintenance contracts or cleaning contracts, or even a profit distribution contract to your asset and the associated lease deals. So for example, let's put a test insurance contract in here. So we would go to add on. We can make a custom add-on where we set it up ourselves and set up the various wallets, or we can choose one. So I'm going to select from all. I've already set up a test insurance contract, so I'm going to click add on, and there it's got the rate that it charges. And the way it works is it's going to automate the payment of the insurance. So when a lessee makes an installment, it's going to automatically transfer the respective rate to the insurance contract address, or wallet address, depending on how it's been set up. So the insurance may have its own smart contract that automatically calculates insurance rates based on the type of asset and the risk profile, and so on and so on. And so it can automatically link to those smart contracts. Now, I've mentioned the term smart contract, and I haven't really explained the concept of this application working on the blockchain. You may have seen in the beginning it said the multi-asset blockchain powered leasing application. So blockchain has allowed us to do a lot in terms of how we move value, and it does this. A lot of these transactions are processed by things that are called smart contracts, which are like computer programs that are based on the blockchain, and they're not only able to act as computer programs, but they can actually transfer and hold value in the terms of cryptocurrency. And this allows us to automate value transfer in various transactions and process various things like paying an insurance provider automatically, and automatically processing the associated details for that payment and storing them in a data format that is accessible and handy to use when we want to look up that information. So that's what makes this application quite innovative, is it's taken a lot of the old school ideas with regards to leasing, and it's brought in the functionality that we can do with applications, and it's also brought in the technology of blockchain, and it's brought all of these things together to create a platform, if you will, that allows you to process all sorts of lease deal related transactions with ease. And this is one of those fascinating parts, and it can be expanded quite significantly. I mean, we could set up a profit share add-on where as lease installments come in, a certain amount is distributed to shareholders that have maybe put in capital to buy that asset. So it is quite broad in its application, and it creates a lot of possibility for innovative entrepreneurs and businessmen and so on, and insurance providers and so on and so on and so on. I mean, it could even be a cleaning contract for an Airbnb property where a certain amount is automatically paid to the cleaning contractor. So you can use your imagination in that sense. This is an aspect that we intend to build up and improve as we go along. It did take quite a lot of engineering and work to get it right so that it would integrate well with the system, but we got there and it's looking great. So we're quite excited about that. Okay, moving on. So use notes. Use notes, this stuff isn't, the use notes aren't stored on the blockchain. They're just there to give basic information to the potential lessee when they're looking at your item in the search results or so on. So we could put there something like item to be used in accordance with safety regulations. That's just an example. You could put other things. Maybe you have specific requirements for your item, like it needs to be cleaned in a certain way or something like that. So that's use notes. Then we've got add location. Add location is important because the application uses your asset's location, its base location, when a search is processed. It gives search results in proximity to where the search location is. So if somebody's searching from their current location, it's going to give them search results in a certain radius. They can specify the radius, and it does this by knowing where the assets are located. So it's important to give a good location information with respect to asset, and it's also used for interaction with the logistics providers. So you'll see here, then we've got the select location screen, which comes in after you've specified the location address. And this is just to help make sure that the GPS coordinates match up well, so that it improves the reliability of logistics service provider interaction. So we recommend you just confirm that it's the right place on the map, so that minimizes any confusion that may occur. Okay, then we move on to blockchain and currency selection. The application has been built to operate on numerous blockchains, but initially we've selected Polygon as the primary blockchain that the application will run on. And this was done because when we reviewed a number of blockchains, Polygon was a great choice in terms of gas fees, transaction speed, and various other aspects that were just well suited to this type of application. So there may be other blockchains included in the future, but for the time being, it is a Polygon blockchain that has been selected. So at the moment, you can't really choose anything else here. Then you'll see below that is initial currency. So this is the initial currency that you set up for your lease deals. It's the currency that will be advertised when somebody searches for your item. It can be changed at a later stage once your item has been listed on the blockchain. And so it's not set in stone, so to speak. It will be once a deal is created and entered into, then that will be the currency for that deal. But you can change it between lease deals if you would like to. That's just one of the options. So there are two types of currency, generally speaking, on a typical blockchain. There's a native currency. So for Polygon, the native currency is POL, formerly known as Matic. And these native currencies are used on the blockchain. The computers that process the transactions on the blockchain are typically paid in this native currency for processing those transactions. many people might be familiar with Bitcoin mining. That is a term that is used where the computers that process the Bitcoin transactions were paid in Bitcoin. So Bitcoin was the native currency for the Bitcoin blockchain. But when the advent of smart contract type blockchains like Ethereum and Polygon and Solana, those sort of came out, they all had their own native currencies to pay for the transactions on those respective blockchains. So for Polygon, it's Pol, and that native currency is used to pay for gas. Gas is a term that can be thought of as synonymous with a transaction fee. It's what you pay to interact with the blockchain, for the blockchain to process those transactions and make sure everything's correct. So essentially, it's a way of remunerating the system and ensuring its longevity. The native currency can also be used to pay your friends or for other things, like you can exchange it on a cryptocurrency exchange and so on. So it's not just used for gas or for paying the computers, it can be used for other things as well, and it has a value associated with it, as you can see on the various exchanges. Now, you will need some of that native currency to interact with the blockchain on this application. We can go into that a bit more later, but that's just a brief overview of the native currency. Then the other type of currency that you would typically find on a blockchain is a smart contract based currency, or often referred to as a token. And those currencies, the smart contract on the blockchain keeps track of who has what amount of that specific token. So those currencies can typically represent a number of different value type propositions. We've selected mostly transactional currencies for the Lease App. So here we have XR, which is a token that is linked to the South African Rand. It's referred to as a stable token, and essentially 1 XR is equivalent to 1 Rand, and it's a means of taking the traditional South African Rand and putting in an equivalent on the blockchain for transactional sake on the blockchain. So that's the one option. We've got another option here, which is USDT. That is also similar to the XR, except it is linked to the US dollar. So 1 USDT would be equivalent to 1 US dollar. And you could go and redeem these back to the original currencies in their respective exchanges, and you could also buy them. And it's just really a means of putting that value on the blockchain so that we can interact on the blockchain. So these currencies are then processed by the application, and they're stored in your respective asset smart contract and so on. I'll get in a bit more into that a bit later. Okay, moving on. The fourth card here is lease terms. So these are the things like the deposit and the lease rate and so on that you would set up for your lease deal. Again, these can also be changed at a later stage once your item has been set up on the blockchain. Let's start at the top here. So the first thing is a lease unit. This is how your lease is measured. So the options are hour, day, week, month, or year. We're going to say select day for our welding machine. I think that's a good sort of measure for a lease for a welding machine. Lease it out per day. And then we've got a minimum duration. That's with respect to that lease unit. So we're going to say 1 day. If we had selected hour, it would be 1 hour. But we've selected days, so it's 1 day. And then maximum, let's say 365 days. So we don't want any specific lease deal to exceed 365 days. Okay, then the next thing is the deposit amount. The deposit amount is with regards to this initial currency, And I must also just say that the shipping rate would also be with regards to this initial currency that we've selected. So let's go and put it back to XR, because we're in South Africa at the moment. So um, a reasonable deposit, I think, for the welding machine, depending on our area and the associated risk and so on, let's maybe say 1,200, and a unit lease amount, let's say, so this unit lease amount is based on that lease unit as well. So we've selected days, so it's going to be a lease amount per unit. So that in our case it will be per day, and let's say maybe 350 Rand per day, or XR per day. It's equivalent to Rand. I think it's a reasonable rate for leasing out a welding machine in this current market. Okay, then payment frequency. Payment frequency, you'll see there's little info signs next to some of these. If you click them, it will give you information about that specific item. But payment frequency, in essence, is how often you would like to be paid. And it's with regards to this lease unit again. So if we had to say a payment frequency of 2, we would be expecting a payment every 2 days. So if somebody leased out the item for 10 days, we would expect a payment every 2 days, and we would then essentially get 5 payments for a 10-day lease. I'm going to say, for example, 7 for this one. So every 7 days I would expect payment. Now, the application automatically generates a statement that's updated as time goes on, and it will automatically add a billing event. In our case, it would be every 7 days. And if payment is late and it goes past a day overdue, then it's going to start calculating interest, which is based on an annual interest rate, and it would charge that on a daily basis, depending on how long something is overdue, and it would add that automatically to the statement that is generated on the application. So both the lessee and lessor would be able to see what the current state is and how much is owed and so on, which works out relatively well. Okay, then booking buffer. The booking buffer is the time between lease deals that you would allow for things like transport or maintenance or cleaning, or just a general time to give you a bit of wiggle room in terms of processing your assets and taking it from one lessee to the next lessee for a new deal and so on. So it's similar to how hotels have their checkout times, and then they have a certain time where they clean the rooms and so on. So that booking buffer allows you to do various things, and obviously it would be with respect to your specific asset and what you need to do to process it in between the various lease deals. Now, I didn't previously mention, but the application facilitates the booking of various lease deals. So if your item is out on lease, the application will still allow for more bookings to be made. It will facilitate receiving the deposits for those lease deals, and it will keep track of those deposits for the respective lease deals, and all the admin and stuff associated with that is most of it is automatically done, so you don't need to worry. That the application looks after it and makes sure that things are processed in accordance correctly, so that there are no mistakes in that sense. So I'm sure you can see how that saves a whole lot of time and effort and money in terms of having to do it manually with paper and keeping track of all sorts of things. It makes it a lot easier. Okay, so booking buffer, we're gonna say maybe 24 hours, so we have a day in between these deals that we can just clean our item and make sure everything is hunky-dory, if you will. Okay, the next thing, cancel window before and cancel window after. And this is measured in hours also. These essentially create a window period before and after the initial planned start date for a lease deal. So if we had to put here one before and one after, it would create a time window 1 hour before and 1 hour after the initial planned start date of a lease deal. And what would happen is if a lessee cancels the deal within that time window, 1 hour before to 1 hour after, then they would need to pay the cancellation charge, which is reasonable if you've had to organize and arrange things to get the item to them, and then in that last sort of hour they cancel. You would expect to be remunerated a little bit for your effort in terms of organization and so on. So the cancellation charge is the next item there, and it is it asks you there a percent of the deposit. So we're going to say 10% of the deposit. So if the lessee had to cancel in those time windows, they would need to pay 120 Rand or forfeit 120 Rand of their deposit for cancelling in those time windows. Then the next thing that we have there is arbitration window. Okay, so when we initially developed this application, there was a consideration of trust between the lessee and the lessor. And obviously that's why we have things like the deposit and the various rules in terms of how things are processed. But we needed a way to deal with the situation where maybe there was a dispute in a lease deal and somebody wasn't releasing a deposit, or there was a claim because of damage and so on and so on. And we needed a way for an arbitrator or a third party to adjudicate over the case and say, okay, we need to correct it by this means. So we went and researched the South African and the international arbitration laws, and we built in that sort of arbitration process and facility into the application, so that it would be possible for the lessee or the lessor to request arbitration, and then the parties could appoint an arbitrator to adjudicate over the case and act impartially and say maybe release a deposit or determine how things should proceed, so that there is a way for things to be resolved if there is a dispute. So the arbitration functionality has been built to adapt to various different locations, whether it be Australia, South Africa, different countries, different territories. It has been built in with that in mind. In South Africa, for example, anybody can act as an arbitrator provided that they're not impeded by specific legal prohibitions or things that prevent them from acting as an arbitrator. So either of the parties to the lease deal could then nominate a arbitrator and request arbitration, and this arbitration window is the time period that is allowed for the other party to respond to that arbitration request and say, look, maybe can we resolve the matter in this way, or can we maybe nominate a different arbitrator because I would prefer somebody that I feel more comfortable being more impartial. And it could be maybe somebody that's operating in the legal field, or in South Africa, it could be somebody that both parties feel is reasonable in their community to act as an arbitrator. And essentially the arbitrator can charge the rate that they would like to charge. There are recommended rates for arbitration based on typical arbitration proceedings, but at the end of the day, it comes up to the nominated arbitrator and what they would like to charge for adjudicating over a case. So the application takes the basic arbitration principles and incorporates it into the application, so that the arbitrator can, for example, release a deposit if it's been held unfairly or so on. And that is what that aspect is for. So once we've included all these things, we can go ahead and click submit, and the application then goes and lists the item on the database. It hasn't yet put it on the blockchain. To do that, you would need to convert it to a BLA. As you can see at the bottom, a BLA is a blockchain listed asset. Now, your item will still be available in searches, but it will need to be converted to a BLA before it can process the various transactions. It essentially needs to be deployed to the blockchain and have your specialized smart contract set up on the blockchain so that it can facilitate the various transactions. The reason we've done it this way is when we started, we also wanted to have an application that the people that were maybe not dealt the best cards in life um, could use to start to improve their financial stability. I I come from a country that is currently dealing with massive unemployment rates, so this was part of the consideration of why we did it this way, to help people that maybe are unemployed that would like to start building up an income via leasing out assets and stuff like that. This gives them the option to do so, and um, they could list their first asset for free without having to worry about putting any money down. And then once they get a lease request, they can come and convert it to the BLA, which is, it's not that expensive, but if somebody's really struggling, at least it gives that little bit of help for them to do that. Okay, so once our asset is listed, we can go to the My Listing section here at the top. Clicking on that, you'll see we have 3 cards here. Just quickly, the one on the left is used for current items. So this will typically show deals that are currently pending or would require action, and also active deals. And by clicking on any one of those items, you would be able to interact with that respective deal or view information relating to that specific deal. Then in the middle here is My Listings, the assets. This will typically show you all the assets that you've listed. So if you've listed a number of assets, they'll be listed over here. And then on the right, this will show you both present and past deals, and clicking on one of those items will also show you the deal view with respect to the state of the deal at that time. So if it's an active deal, then you would get the active view. If it's a deal that's been concluded, and then you would get the concluded view, and so on, and you would be able to view and interact with it in that respect. So if we select here in the middle, My Asset Listings, it will open it up. You'll see there the asset image, the asset item info that you put in when you listed the asset, and the lease info. And this is basically what's been stored on the database with regards to your asset. And then you'll see there on the right is the convert to BLA, as we previously spoke about. For your asset to interact on the blockchain and to process various transactions, or for the application to process various transactions for your asset, it needs to take your asset and your asset listing and convert it to a BLA, which is an acronym for blockchain listed asset. And by clicking that, you'll be prompted then to convert it, and you'll need some of the native blockchain currency to pay for and put your listing on the blockchain. And then once you've done that, you'll see now these various items here don't work. They will start to work once you've converted your item to a blockchain listed asset and put it on the blockchain. Like, you'll be able to withdraw excess funds. You won't be able to withdraw the deposit because that is locked unless the lessee has conceded a certain amount to you, or an arbitrator, as we discussed previously, has released some or all of that deposit. But you can withdraw payments that come in, or maybe you've transferred money into your blockchain listed asset because it has its own wallet address, so it can receive funds. So you could use it as a bank account of sorts if you wanted to. If you just wanted to put money aside, that's for your assets exclusive use, so you could do that as well. And you would then also be able to withdraw that money out into your typical blockchain wallet address via that function. Then view asset data logs. You would be able to view the various transactions related to your assets, so various lease deal transactions, and the various blockchain actions associated with your asset. Then the next part here, repair and maintenance. So This section here allows for you to pay people that may conduct repairs and maintenance on your asset. Not only does it allow you to pay them, but if they don't accommodate blockchain-based payments, it also allows for you to record a payment that was made in a legacy type format, like your typical country currencies or fiat currencies, if you're familiar with that term. You can record them here so that all those payment records are recorded on the blockchain and are automatically associated with your asset. So you can think of it as asset-centric accounting, if you will, where you're keeping all the information together, and it's then stored on a blockchain and is accessible at a later time, irrespective of whether you've lost a file in your archives or something like that. I'm sure you can see why this makes life a lot easier in so many respects. And then the last part here is transfer ownership. So when your asset gets listed on the blockchain, it gets its own smart contract, and not only does it get its own smart contract to facilitate various lease related transactions, but it's also linked to something called an NFT, which stands for non-fungible token. And if you're not already familiar with an NFT is a token on the blockchain which is linked to a specific thing, and it's unique. So a specific NFT token is unique. Thereby, so what we've done in this application is we take a specific asset and we link it to a specific NFT, non-fungible token. So there's a unique token associated with your asset. And what that allows us to do is it allows for your asset BLA token to be viewable in a typical blockchain wallet as an NFT, which means that it's easy to transfer ownership of that respective BLA and the various aspects related to it. So if you transferred ownership of this, it would transfer the ownership of your BLA and your listing to another user, and all the associated data and privileges and so on would automatically be transferred to them as well. Now we recommend using this transfer ownership function instead of doing a typical transfer on some other blockchain wallet provider, because this transfer ownership function over here updates the application database as well, so that it updates to the correct user and it shows all the listings. So that's quite important to use this means over here. Now, once you've converted your item to a BLA, this, instead of saying convert to BLA, will allow you to interact with the blockchain listed asset on the blockchain. So you'll be able to see the actual lease rates and everything listed on the blockchain as it stands. You'll be able to see the balances of the various currencies in your blockchain listed asset. You'll be able to update certain things like your lease rate or the deposit amount, and also update your add-ons. As we discussed previously, listing an add-on, you'll be able to add more, remove them. There is the functionality to view and edit your logistics provider there. So initially, when you set up your asset, there is a default logistics provider setup, which is the BLA owner, and they're set default shipping rates that we described earlier. But the system has been built to accommodate all sorts of third-party logistics providers. We haven't fully completed the front-end development of that yet, but in the future, the plan is that you would be able to get trusted logistics providers listed on your or associated with your assets. So when a lessee searches for it, they can choose that logistics provider and their associated rate and make a booking with them and get your item delivered and returned based with that logistics provider, and the application automatically interfaces and interacts with them. Remember, we spoke about the dimensions and the weight of your asset automatically being communicated with the logistics provider to make sure that they could accommodate your asset. So I'm sure you can start to see now why the application brings so much functionality and ability, and makes life a whole lot easier in terms of handling these things that may have previously been extremely tedious for an individual to try and manage by themselves. And this application essentially brings that power and that ability to your fingertips, and makes the process of setting up and executing a lease deal effortless, compared to how it may have been in the past in many respects, not just the admin, but processing the transactions, setting up. I mean, you're not even having to go to a bank and set up a bank account because it's already built into the application, which if we say so ourselves, we think it's a brilliant new way of being able to efficiently do this sort of thing, and it creates a whole lot of possibility in terms of setting up lease deals for smaller movable assets, where previously it was just a hassle for the typical individual to do. Okay, so then the one thing that I haven't mentioned just yet, which is also quite cool, is this direct asset link on the bottom left here. One of the other ways that we thought of helping people was to allow them to generate as much income as possible through the application. That was the idea, to give the individual a means of generating income and taking power of their financial future. And one of the ways that we thought we could do that was to give them a link that would help them to generate income by getting users to sign up to the application, or not getting users to sign up to the application, but rewarding the individual if a user signs up to the application using their link. So not only does this link allow for you to advertise your item, or inform somebody about your item on social media like Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp, or the various messaging platforms, but also if somebody then clicks on that link and they then go and sign up to the Lease app using your link, what will happen is, if they go and then list assets and convert them to BLA, the system is built that it automatically takes a part of that fee that is paid to convert to a BLA, and it transfers it to your blockchain wallet address, and that's this address over here. So when you set up a Lease App account, you get assigned a blockchain wallet address. That's this address here, and automatically, if somebody signs up using your asset link, whenever they list an asset and convert it to BLA, that money is transferred, or a portion of that fee that they've paid to convert is transferred to your blockchain wallet address. Obviously, terms and conditions apply, and the rates may vary from time to time, depending on how things are going with the application. So yes, that direct asset link can be used, and there's also another general link which can be linked to your profile, which is found in, well, not can be, it is linked to your profile, and it's found in the profile section. So yeah, we think that's great. Essentially, it will allow people to earn income without having to invest much at all, and it's essentially like having a asset in the cloud that can generate you income, which we think is pretty cool. Okay, so that gives you a bit of overview and an introduction into the Lease App and how it works, and the cool features that we are quite excited about, and we really think it's going to bring a lot of value to the leasing market, and allow people to generate income from all sorts of different types of assets. And we think there is so much value and potential in what this application can do for a wide variety of individuals and companies alike. So we would really appreciate your support. Please sign up and get involved, list your assets, and please feel free to communicate if there's any issues or things that you see that you feel need to be improved, or maybe you spotted a little bug. But we would really appreciate your support and helping us grow this application. So thanks for taking the time to check out this video. We do appreciate it and hope to see you on the application. Thanks guys, have a good day. Bye.